It's a very good morning now to the Dubbo Region Mayor Matthew Dickerson, looking very well. A bit rested, or you've been working? Because you've been a bit unwell, Mr. Mayor. We were just talking about that.
I've got no option but to work, Brett. In fact, I think as the mayor, taking a sick day is not an option. Actually, I've never taken a sick day as mayor, to be honest, but the option of taking that is just not there. So you just got to soldier on, plough on and keep going. Because people come to meet with you. They might have travelled from Sydney or out of state. They might have lined up an appointment for weeks in advance. So you feel like you can't just say, oh, I'm feeling a bit sick today. So you just have to soldier on.
So all those visitors and guests all have the Dubbo Mayor germs.
That's right.
Hey, look, I know that we've been sick up here too, and it's getting around. I know that there's a new wave of COVID out there too, which is a bit scary. Hey, let's talk about a couple of things, because I've been reading at the council's website that Dubbo Regional Council is working strategically with businesses, educational institutions and industry partners behind the scenes to promote and enhance the economic, development opportunities for the Dubbo region. Can you expand on that and what that means for us?
Well, one of the things that I think we do really well is to make sure that our businesses know about opportunities that are out there. And working with things like the Dubbo Business Chamber, I think they do a very good job, and working closely with them, and just our businesses in general. So that might be holding forums, for example, letting people know about opportunities. Obviously, there are a significant number of opportunities with our renewable energy zone, making sure people know about those opportunities. There was an AUKUS forum in Dubbo recently. Now you think, AUKUS, building submarines, what's that got to do with Dubbo, and how are we going to have submarines going up and down the Macquarie River? But there are other opportunities with that, with AUKUS, in terms of the collaboration with Australia, the UK and the US. There are other opportunities outside submarines. It's not just about nuclear submarines. So there are opportunities there, and maybe local Dubbo businesses can be involved in those. So it's quite fascinating, all these opportunities. It's also fascinating when you talk to Dubbo businesses, how many things they're involved with outside what you'd normally expect them to be involved with. So you talk to someone and they are involved in things on a much broader scale. And I think some Dubbo businesses do a really good job in making sure they do take advantage of all of those opportunities.
Because the renewable energy zone here, I'm just reading as we're talking, suggesting a major large-scale investment and projects. And council's got to get used to that sort of thing as we expand and move forward, correct? And I guess as residents, we have to get used to the idea they're going to be here too.
Well, it's one of those things, Brett, with the res in particular. Some people aren't excited about it. Some people aren't over the moon about it. But it's going to happen. And our job as council is, we could have taken one or two directions. We could have said, we're going to stand here and hold our hand up and say, we don't want this, go away, please stop it. We don't have the power to stop it. We are not the consent authority. We have approximately zero power to stop it. So you can stand there and try and be an obstruction, which you end up being a road hump. You basically get run over because it's going to happen. Or we can say, how can we take advantage of this? And that's our job. That's what we're doing at the moment, is trying to see how we can take advantage of the res being on our doorstep in every possible way. And that can be in community benefits, that can be in other projects we might plan, or it could just be local businesses. How do we get them ready? How do we get them skilled up? How do we get them aware of the opportunities for them to be involved in some way, shape or form for all of this activity that's going to happen?
All right, let's move to another thing, and this is a question without notice, because I just thought about it. I caught up with the Western New South Wales Paddlers Kayak and Canoeing group yesterday about those tyres they've pulled from the Macquarie River. No one seems to know who can help. I know council has helped with the disposal of that. Is there anything that council at the local government level can do to help clean up the other tyres that are in the river, or do you know who can?
One of the problems we have is just staff numbers, the cost of staff, and all of our outdoor staff are pretty busy with all their normal roles. The cleanups, it sounds sad, but really some of the great work done by cleanups is done by volunteer groups. So there are a number of volunteer groups that do cleanups along the river, for example. So our staff, we just don't have enough dollars in our budget or enough staff time to say, let's just do a bit of a cleanup of the river today, because then the grass gets too long or the fields don't get marked out for sport on weekends. So our outdoor staff are pretty busy doing all those things.
They're looking for another date to get people together to do the remainder. They pulled 70 tyres. There's 112 that they counted just between, I think it was Devil's Hole and Terramunga Mine. So that's a lot of tyres in a small space. They have worked it out to equate to, I think it was 1 tyre per 90 metres. So that's a lot of tyres. Is there any way that you could lend some council staff, or they could volunteer to come and help if they could. Because, I mean, pulling up tyres on a canoe or a kayak sounds very difficult when
does.
they were talking to me about that. So is that something that we can help with?
It'd have to be something that was in our budget. We've got
Yeah.
our budget process out at the moment. We're taking submissions till the 3rd of June, till 9 a.m. on the 3rd of June. So if you've got an idea for that, put your submission in. There's no allocation of staff to go and do that at the moment. Of course, they can volunteer. Our staff are absolutely able to volunteer in any things they want to volunteer outside their work hours. That's not a problem at all. But there are so many different things, Brett, where we've got people volunteering in our community, and it almost seems like volunteering is covering off where state, federal and local government aren't doing some of the work, and so volunteers are stepping in to do
Yeah.
that. But can we just say to the public, don't put tyres in the river. It would make it much easier for everyone if we just didn't drop our litter, if we didn't throw tyres in the river. People do it sometimes because if they dispose of those tyres correctly, they take them out to the Willandra Waste Depot, they might be, they will be charged a fee to do that. So they say, well, that'll be better, I'll just throw it in the river. Well, that's a terrible thing to do. But again, people do it because they don't want to pay for it.
To be fair, they've dated these back to the 1930s, 1960s, etc. So it's not current people, but there may be some in there that people have done. And you're right, you shouldn't dispose of them just in the river. You should dispose of them. And the concern is the toxins that'll leach into the water from those tyres, because they hardly ever break down, and they take so long to do that anyway. So they'll be there for ages. Let's turn our attention about developing a community safety and crime prevention plan. You and I have talked about crime in Dubbo for some time now. I guess a fair few people, residents, were concerned about that sort of thing. Tell me how council reacted to all of that pressure.
So we've got, I'm not sure if council reacted to that pressure. I think council's always had a very small part to play in getting different organisations to discuss crime. The Community Safety Prevention Plan is exactly what that's about, making sure that different organisations come together and discuss ways to prevent crime. So for example, we might have discussions with police. We don't wear blue, we don't carry a gun on our hip, we can't arrest people, we can't convict people, we can't put people in jail. But maybe in working with the police, we can take their suggestions on board. So for example, the police might say, we've got an area here, you've got a CCTV system as council, can you make sure that in your next budget allocation for CCTV, you add a camera in this location here, or upgrade the camera system. That's one of the things in our budget for next year, is to upgrade our camera system. Some of that camera system we put in more than 10 years ago, so there are better cameras now, higher resolution cameras, cameras that have got the ability to see better at distance. So can we do that to help doing that? One of the things that was fascinating when we had a presentation by Boxar recently was, I spoke to the woman that came from Boxar, and she said that when she was studying still and working out where she was going to go with her life, one of the things that she found fascinating was a lecture that she attended one day where they talked about the fact that just putting in an extra light in one certain area reduced crime significantly. She said, wow, that's fascinating. Just a light, you don't need someone standing there with a uniform on, just changing the lighting in an area can change that. So that's the sort of thing council can do. We can change the lighting in different areas. So if the police, for example, tell us about a hotspot, then is that something we can do to address that with some additional lighting? Our job is not to be out there arresting people. Our job is really to work with groups, or sometimes bring groups together. There are many state government departments, there are many not-for-profit organisations, non-government agencies, NGOs as they're called, lots of those different groups, but sometimes they work in their own silos, they do a very good job in their own silo. Sometimes just take one step back and have these different groups talk to each other and see if there are better holistic plans. And so that's one way we can, as a council, play a part in all of that. But again, the frustrating part from our perspective is we don't control the sentencing regime, and that seems to be the main area, Brett, that I get feedback from. If you look at the pre-pandemic to post-pandemic period, crime has gone down in absolute numbers by 0.2%, so it's basically stayed the same. But the prison population across the state has gone down by 12.2%. So many people say, well, there's an indication that people are committing the crime still, but they're just not being put in jail. And that's a frustration for many people, because these people get out, they get caught, the police do a great job, they get arrested, they get charged, and then they just fly through the court system and they're back out on the streets. And I think that's frustrating.
All right, community consultations, more details through Dubbo Regional Council's website. 60 seconds, update on the Dubbo Regional livestock markets for me.
So no decision's been made. We've got an LOI that's now closed for sale or lease. come the June council meeting, there'll be a decision by councillors that will either go down a direction of one of three ways, Brett. Either a direction of sale, won't necessarily be deciding on who will buy it, but because it was an EOI, if we take it one of these directions, it'll be, for example, let's go out to a lease a tender just to sell it, or it might be a decision about leasing it. Again, we could go out to a full-on tender just for leasing, or we could stay internal but change the business model that we've got there at the moment. So that'll be the June council meeting, one of those three directions. And I've got to stress, I've said it a number of times, councillors have made no decision. I know talking to other councillors, they're torn about what to do. They're waiting for all the data to come in. No decision's been made, but a decision will be made at the June council meeting.
So when you say internal quickly, that means that council would still run it somehow.
If we did it internal, we would still run it, but we've got to change the model because the model's not appropriate now with all the change in legislation that have occurred over the last 74 years.
All right, thanks, Matt. We'll catch up next week.
Thanks, Brett.